in seeing what's happening in Peterborough with shield sores, it takes me right back to being a child where my family began and fought the struggle to close American Atomics in Tucson, Arizona. American Atomics, just like shield sores, was claiming that they had released this much smaller amount, and then later on being forced to reveal that they'd released much more. And I was reading how shield sores just was forced to admit they had released 488% more than they had originally claimed for 1 year, for example. And it's this continual process of cover up, hide the truth, claim that there's not a problem. That's the pattern. It's the same exact thing that happened in Tucson. Of course we didn't release that much. Oh, well, yeah, really it was a lot more than we said, but we just had this accident. Oh, somebody turned a valve the wrong way, and so we released 21,000 curies in a 5-minute period. Well, what happened at shield source in that 5-minute period? Did someone turn the valve the wrong way? How is it that the same thing happens at this, at these same facilities that do the same thing, making exit signs? My mom read that little 1-inch article, and her father, my grandfather, had been head of the Manhattan Project medical team. Grandfather knew a little something about radiation and its effects on humans. And she called him up and said, they say they released this much, that sounds like a lot. And is that safe? And my grandfather assured her it was absolutely not safe. The amount of radiation that they were releasing escalated at that point as they expanded, making similar products, exit signs out of tritium, watch faces, and then triggers for hydrogen bombs. It's a mixed industrial and residential neighborhood that they were in. So the neighborhood was heavily impacted. There were pets and people who were losing their hair because of the levels of tritium. You had people who had sores inside their mouths that were something that doctors had only seen from people who had been in Japan and experienced the nuclear attack, or people who had observed nuclear bomb testing above ground in Nevada. My mom was there every day talking to people who worked at the plant. Do you have any health problems? Or, giving them information, getting information from them about what was going on inside the plant. So she spent a huge amount of time right at the site. The school lunch factory for the entire city was a half block away from this facility. One of the things that eventually ended up closing the facility down was when the federal Nuclear Regulatory Committee people tested cake from that facility and found that it was well in excess of their safe levels. When people inside the plant started actually writing letters to the editor, really revealing what was going on inside the plant, and then you had the cake tested, you had a 6-year-old whose urine had 89,000 something picocuries of tritium in it when he was tested. They got shut down, then the city council and FEMA, the county declared that they were not allowed to be in business anywhere within the environs of the city or the county, and then the business owners just disappeared. They turned out the lights in the middle of the night and vanished. For all the people who might think that this is not some sort of health and safety issue, it was apparent that it was such a severe issue that the governor declared a state of emergency and brought in the National Guard to take over the facility. Then it becomes an issue where the governor can go to the federal government, and did so. This is not some huge facility. They spent 3 years cleaning it. The school district ended up burying 17,000 crates of food that were determined had been contaminated at the school lunch factory, well in excess of $1 million in today's worth of food. There was one 10-year later examination of the employees of American Atomics, and it found that 10 years later they still had tritium in their urine that exceeded safe levels. And that's significantly more than is being released here, but cumulatively, you're gonna get there as far as how much is being released here. I literally believe my mom is right now sick with cancer because of her actions at American Atomics. She's one of 9 kids. She's the only one who's had cancer. This is a woman who really takes her health seriously, has done everything possible. She had breast cancer 13 years ago, and now she has lung cancer. She never smoked a day in her life. It should not be allowed to get to the point where someone has to risk their life to fight to save other people. If it gets to that point, the nuclear regulatory people have not done their job, and the government hasn't done their job. I don't see how that's a reasonable risk. People were put in who were not massively interested financially in American Atomics. Then they acted as regulators should act. You had really a huge expense for the public from, our tax-paying dollars, and then you had the ongoing effects for people's health. And all of this was a facility that the experts kept telling us was safe. There were continually letters to the editor saying that we were being alarmist from so-and-so doctor. You had continually people from the regulatory committee that were saying, oh, this is completely safe. And one of those members, of course, was on the board of American Atomics, so he had a financial interest in saying it was safe. 34 years later, and we still have to deal with people using tritium for that. There's no critical need to use tritium to make exit signs. So they can have this fiction that nuclear power is economically viable. And the only way you can make that argument is if you pretend that we can dispose of the waste for free. That's not a price that we should pay. Economics is finally waking up to the reality that there are costs that are not in dollars and cents.